Um, all right, so a little recap. So the challenge is due on the 9th or the 11th. So you can post either on the 9th. I'll host an environment critique hour on the 9th. And on the 11th, we'll talk about how to add detail to foreground, middle ground, background, to seam them together, to maintain your values, a way to just keep the environment breathing. I'll try to talk a little bit about that today. I might run a stream. I might detail my stuff tonight, um, which is the thumbnails I started work on. And I might just talk about a little bit about them. Just turn off this AC. It's very loud. So I find myself screaming over it. Um, and typically, what you should be doing now is a lot of you, if you are participating, should be finished with your thumbnails at this point. It's been about a week since they've been out, so it's really important that you guys start finalizing your thumbnails and start work on the major aspects. Remember that foreground needs detail, middle ground needs detail, and background needs detail, all centered around the focal point. The focal point needs to stay reinforced. And all these things take time and energy to organize. And I think that this next week you guys should be organizing detail, deciding on which parts of the core references you're going to be pulling from for the patterns. I didn't mention this, but you can, if you want, use texture overlays very minimally. Remember Peter Moorbacher's video, Apply Texture Without Looking Like a Douche? I don't know if you guys ever seen it, but don't just take the reference and then smack it on top and then put it on multiply and expect the detail to just come through. You guys can use the core references and manipulate them just a little bit. Of course, these photos do not belong to you. They belong to whoever they belong to on the Google search that I found them in. But you are allowed to manipulate photos if they look nothing like the original. That is the legal kind of discourse for that. So you can, if you manage to mess around with the photographs and overlay them, you can in a photo manipulation kind of photo bashing manner. Which is done a lot for matte painting, or matte painting, whatever, however you want to say it, for cinema and concept art for movies and games. You can use the references as texture overlays, but you can't just use the whole photograph. Take piece by piece, reorganize it, and make sure that it looks nothing like the original. This isn't photo manipulation or use of, like painting over an already existing photograph. Your work, your reference enhances your work, but it is not your work. So your thumbnail should still be the main, you know, that's what you're working from. Your thumbnail is still the has to stay intact after you start detailing. If it's not intact and your thumbnail looks nothing like it did after you start applying texture overlays or stamps or whatever you end up using to complete this environment, then you've pretty much worked backward at that point. So I'm giving you the green light, but be very careful. You can use these textures here as texture overlays. You can use them. You can grab this little piece, reorganize it with the transform tool, and throw it across one of the parts of your foreground or something. You can use this, but remember, be smart about it. Don't just use the whole piece. Paint some of the stuff yourself. Paint most of it yourself. 70-80% should be hand painting, and the rest of the 20 should be an enhancement on your detail with texture overlays. I am not saying use these as the full piece. Take it piece by piece. Each photograph should be used minimally as a texture overlay if you don't have the time to complete every single rock. This is very common. It's used a lot in concept art these days. No one has time to draw every single rock, or actually the mental attention given to organizing the terraforming patterns. No one has time for that. So yes, pronounced the same as Matt. I said Mate for such a long time. It started just that's how I say it. It read as a French word to me. That's how my French teacher pronounced that word. So I've just started to say it like that. um, we can use some kindness. We can use some kindness, but who better than ourselves? All right. So a little thing. Remember that once the class starts and we start talking about the lessons, please remember to refrain from discussion outside of the topics and stay attentive. All right. And my sergeants at arms, where are you? Please make sure that you are timing out anyone who breaks these rules, anyone who comes in spamming their galleries or something like that. Nothing wrong with sharing your stuff, but just don't spam it. All right. So these are the only two pieces I found today on the, let me go to the community real quick. On the Google community that were a little different from what we've been seeing. So I can't critique 14-day challenges. I can, however, talk about how accurately these are starting to look like real depictions of what I wrote. So they do feel like great graveyards. So this is starting to look amazing. I'm really proud of you guys. You kind of refocused everything again. I love this one. The skeletons are they're so nice, and little pieces breaking through them. Is that like a two-headed skeleton right there? Oh, wonderful job. Wonderful job. I love the camels. Try to make it so that the camels aren't just going like a side scroller, which is very boring and two-dimensional. Try to make it as if the camels are traveling on the z-axis towards the horizon. That'll make this piece a little bit more interesting. I know it'll be a little difficult capturing the camels from the side because we're just so used to our vector art memories of everything. But yeah, try the camels going towards the horizon, and we're looking at the camels disappearing into the distance. Great work, great work. Oh, I love the little campsite. Is that a campsite? Like that's a fireplace right here? Oh, I love that. Oh, there's just been so many ideas that I've been having, like a really blaring sun and long cast shadows and like someone in the cast shadow, like a camp or a tent, in the cast shadow. That'd just be so cool. Yeah, these are looking amazing. I love seeing what a tiny little description does to everyone's imagination and the varieties that come through them. I like the spacious represent the spacious version or depiction of the Titan's graveyard, like a long, great desert, like you see in Dunes, or Dune, the movie. I think. I don't know if it's Dunes or Dune, but it's Dune. But I really like the spaciousness. It doesn't always have to be a cluster of great rocks, but it can be distributed over like in between sand. But remember, the rocks are still needed. The body parts of the great titans fallen into scattered pieces are still needed. I love this. Looks very Easter Islandy. I love that. I'm not sure about the tower. I didn't describe any tower. You can't just bring in units that weren't in the description. So, get rid of the tower, I recommend, and have some more pieces just scattered through. Remember that the golden ratio or the rule of thirds basically tells you to guide the eye in the line of sight, detail focal point by the next, chain them together, thread them together, leading the eye towards the focal point and then nicely leading the eye back. So try to create lines of sight. These are all just tips that you guys can think of. I love these. I love the little sketches. Oh, I love the legs. So these are like legs. Oh wow, very, very nice. I love that. I love the hand on the sword and it's just in the ground. Beautiful job. And I would just totally recommend some atmospheric fade near the tops of the leg, just for the leg to feel like it's up in the air. Very, very nice. I'm just getting all these images in my head. Just looking at you guys' work, it's so inspiring. Very well done. I really like this. Oh, I love that. Like just in between a great, like a canyon. Very nice work. So try to imagine what two suns does to cast shadows. You'll see two shadows of everything, which will make everything feel even more menacing when you have two shadows cast on a great boulder. It'll just look so much more menacing, and you're going to have an opportunity for cast shadows. Like, you're going to have shadows just up the butt. You're going to have a lot of chances to really mess around and have fun with cast shadows. Try the best thing, really. Okay. Oh, this is very nice, like a bird's eye view, like a really high bird's eye view because of the tilted horizon. Very nice. Careful with the tilted horizon though, it's not very applicable. Like if you were ever going to use this in a cinema, like in a scene of a movie or a game, it's very difficult to apply this tilted horizon unless you're deliberately trying to show them like as if they're flying with a plane over top. A character who's always traveling by foot, like a sword and sandals type of adventure. We never see this. This is like an alien concept to them. This would never be something they ever were high enough to look in unless they were, um, I don't know, unless it's some sort of Icarus character who can fly. But it's fantasy. Anybody can fly, I guess. Oh, I really love these really, really high suspended rocks here, which is really drowned in the atmosphere. I love this. I think you're getting a great feeling here. I think you should stick to it. Create some nice detail relief in this area. Not detail relief, detail relief is back here, but create some nice points of detail here to attract the attention. Make sure to not make it look like shadow puppets. So the biggest danger of working with thumbnails like this, the best benefit of working with thumbnails like this is being able to organize the canvas and the composition in a very quick, easy way that doesn't require much editing or repainting. But the biggest danger is it starts to look like shadow puppets. So I think that's what we need to do is remember that all of these really, really high contrast, deep values eventually need to be lightened up and replaced with detail. There's actually a painting by Peter Moorbacher. I don't know why he's been on my mind. I think because I've always been talking about him, but The Gate of Peter Moorbacher Gate. Oh, there was a Facebook search right here. So this is an awesome example of what to work toward when you're crossing over from thumbnail to final illustration. So as you can see, the foreground is darker and it gets lighter, and contrast almost disappears, without in exception to this situation of silhouette right here. But the contrast definitely does go down as you go up. With exception to this area here, but just ignore this area because it is supposed to be like a light coming through and something coming through. So you can see, you can still see detail here in the darkest area, so it doesn't look like a blank shade, a black shape, which is what I'm really worried about with your thumbnails here. Just make sure that you're raising the value just ever so slightly and introducing some nice rock detail. This is one of the examples where you can use an overlay of texture and really mess around with the patterns until they look right. Make sure don't depend too much on the photograph to render for you. You have to set up some really great cast shadows. So the artist here really discern between the cube, the upper part of the cube catching the light, and the sides that are cast in shadow. We have cooler shadows here, almost gray, almost completely grayscale, and then the warm light source just sitting on top. Organize the color of your light source. What's the color of my light source? How much detail do I want? Where's my focal point? All of these questions, once you answer them, will really help guide you towards a home run. I'm going to close this up. So beware of the shadow puppets disease. Please, please, please. Let's take a look at some more of them. I cannot wait until these are finished. I can't wait until I see the full color images. Remember guys, you need a wash. So if you're transferring over and you're painting the final image, you're going to choose from one of these and paint it as a final illustration. Remember that it needs to be transferred into color, and once you transfer it into color, you need to raise all the values back up. Too much contrast will lead to muddy colors. That way you're allowed to detail and given some wiggle room for detail. But you need to choose a wash, so that purple or that orange or that green that you choose, that has to stay around the whole image. So actually get a new layer, go to color, and just throw that entire wash on top, because that's what the image needs to stay in. It's not going to be this vibrant, of course, you have to edit it, but you're starting from a color for the atmosphere. You're giving the atmosphere a color, which is the big deal here. We're trying to take the next step after choosing the color of the atmosphere, then we choose the color of the light source, then we choose the color of the shadows, and we choose the color of the ambience, which is related to the atmosphere, and then we choose individual colors for every, if there's someone with a red cape, they have to have some redness in there, but that redness has to respect the color wash that you originally chose. So you can't just choose cherry reds in a cool environment. That's just simply not allowed. You choose cooler reds, like from up here. Alright, so remember all of that stuff. I really recommend you guys write these down. If you're watching this on YouTube, listen to it again and write it down. Make sure you're asking yourself all these questions when you start detailing. And if you don't focus on these questions, I'm so sorry, but it really might fail. Your environment might fail. You might find the foreground is just too dark. You can't work around it. You might find the background just has no opportunity for detail. If you haven't decided where your focal point is and haven't painted anything on the grayscale stage of your final illustration, you'll find it's even harder to paint later on when you have all that color to blend with as well. Get the grayscales and the details out of the way and use color as an enhancement. Try to render as much as possible in grayscale. And that's it. Let's get on with the paintovers. Alright, so I really take these environments seriously. That's why I'm spending so much time debriefing you or briefing you on them. Alright, so this is a picture of Katarina from League of Legends. Kataraya. Is it Katarina? Kataraya. Is that how you spell her name? I'm not sure if it is Katarina. I'm not sure. Yes, windowed. Alright, but let me do a little really quick thing for you here. Let me get this exact pose. So not exact pose. Alright, I'm going to do something. And you tell me when it starts looking weird. So, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Alright. So this size right here, so let me raise her height. And the nose tip is a little high that you drew. And the nose width is a little thin, which has actually made the nose feel a little smaller, so I can't mess with that. So this is what happens when we have this issue. When we have like a nose that is a little bit outside. So you might get away with this kind of nose in a realistic painting. But what happens when you're literally drawing a Barbie doll? Katarina is a Barbie doll in League of Legends. So you might be taking on a realistic version of her. Maybe she looks a little bit more manly. Maybe she's a little bit more of a... Ew, man, some people just need a life. Damn it, view image. Some people want to take a... sorry, one second. So some people might take on a more realistic rendition of this character, which might be like a realistic, war-weathered kind of character. She's probably broken her nose a couple of times. But in my opinion, I think, which is really well guided, I like that it's a very mature design choice. But when we have a very like deliberate deviation, even if it's accidental, it feels deliberate, it will get in the way. When we might be able to get away with it in an illustration, but when we take it into a modeler, we really do see the difference. So that nose needs to stay a Barbie nose when we're talking about characters that start with that Barbie nose. It doesn't even have to be a Barbie nose. It doesn't have to, not all faces have to feel like Barbies. In fact, I can just use the transform tool for this. I also think the lens flare is a little bit excessive. The reason why we get lens flares with cameras is because the camera is pointing directly at the sunlight. The camera doesn't know how to process that much light, so all that happens is a distortion. The camera kind of reorganizes the light and we just get a symmetrical pattern. So I'm shrinking the size over here, tucking that nostril in just a little bit, pointing the nose down. She will still feel like a war-weathered character, like a veteran in Noxus, I think it is. But she won't feel like it's an age signature. She won't feel so old. Okay. So when we're talking about a big nose for a character, the realistic equivalent of it, so there's a show I've been recently watching. Let me find the character for you. So what's her name? Alright, so this character right here. Let me see if I can find her. Damn it. 1 second, please. Sorry, I'm just looking up for her. Joan Clayton. Alright, perfect. So this is Joan Clayton. She's from the show Penny Dreadful. And what we're looking at here is kind of the realistic equivalent of what you drew. This is exactly what reminded me of her. So we have this really, really old kind of nose on a young face. So every other signature wasn't really there. We can get away with this. She was supposed to be an old witch, kind of ugly, misunderstood character. Really the most heart-wrenching episode in the entire series. But anyway, this size here, it does not say beautiful Barbie doll. It does not say the temptress. It does not say beautiful. She did have an opposite, which in the story, in the show where they cast the actress deliberately to be like a beautiful old woman. But this right here, you can still have the exact same style of nose, but 30 years earlier, where it doesn't really interrupt, kind of almost deliberately, the beauty involved in this character. And she's supposed to be like a crazy swordswoman temptress who worked her way to the highest ranks and whatnot. Katarina, I mean. So I'm just trying to get this nose to change just a little bit so that it can still match the beauty level. Still looks very distinguished. Still a very, kind of looks like Fiora just a little bit with that French face, but I would shrink it even more, just a little bit. And that's the biggest thing that came, because you were saying that you were having anatomy issues. Anatomy issues, one big aspect of anatomy issues are in the symmetries. Symmetries are like this massive diva aspect of anatomy and portraiture that just have to be noticed. They have to be taken care of. And if they're not, we do have issues. So I'm going to keep that tip, but make it a little bit more like you're painting around very anime lines. So the tips and the geometric, the geometries here are very deliberate, they seem. Okay. But her whole face, her whole demeanor really feels like she actually is doing this gesture. She's actually doing this movement. She's actually in a fight. It feels like a Joan of Arc kind of style of showing off her character, which I really, really like. But let's just look at the way the nose looked before. Still very beautiful woman, but her nose just a little bit more realistic than it was before. So before, after. And that would be my biggest change for this image. Other changes, I get why you're using the lens filler because the lens flares are kind of sitting like smack dab in the middle of both swords, which is cool because you're drawing attention to them and they seem to fit, but not the lens flare. What doesn't fit is the lens flare. What does fit is the shine. So you can just keep the shine and get rid of the flare. The shine still works. I think you were guided to where this image is huge. It has to be 5,000. Content. Oh, what? Oh, I don't know what just happened. Photoshop. Okay, I don't know. So yeah. Oops. So I'll just do it this way. Won't be able to control Z. But yeah, just get rid of the lens flare. It doesn't match. It doesn't make any sense. Her swords aren't made of fire. So if you do have a character whose sword is made of fire, who has a pretty bright light coming out of their sword, and the camera's pointing at them, and it's just like this really cool, heroic scene, at that point, please use a lens flare. Do it. But it's not appropriate to use a lens flare if there's no light. If there's no major light reflection, there's no sunlight. She's not in any kind of bright room. She seems to be in the dark. It's like she's fighting in a foggy war, which is really cool setup because of all the fog of war stuff that we do have in League. But yeah, I would just get rid of the lens flare completely. It's really distracting. The rainbow only happens, I mean, why is the rainbow such a wrong thing? This rainbow in the lens flare, the white light shining through the lens of the camera and acts as a clear prism that breaks the white light into its many colors, which is the lens flare. We pretty much have rainbows everywhere right now. And that's not appropriate because pure light isn't shining on her. She might have like magical, because she is kind of a magical character. She might have some magic coming out of her swords. But as for distorting it that much, I'm not sure. And as for that much lens flare, definitely not possible. What am I doing? I'm doing the clone stamp just along here to get rid of that completely. I'm just using the clone tool on Photoshop. Probably the most useful tool ever. Okay, so I just want the attention to go back to her. I love the way you painted her skin. I mean her hair. It's so out of the way and really pretty. I love the fog. But I think this all goes back to that wash issue. We're having such great cools here, very gray cools that seem to speak a kind of fog in the image, but we also have this really strong cool, warm color, bright skin tone, bright reds that are kind of throwing that all away. So what I would do is, actually, she's a red-haired swords dagger woman lady. So what I would do is I would actually just let her hair stay saturated in red. So that's the last thing you see kind of before she attacks you in a foggy environment. And after that, oh, whoopsie. All right. After that, I wouldn't saturate the skin. I would leave the skin very pale looking. Not because she has a pale complexion, but because it's just the hair that we're talking about here. And because the hair is supposed to be a cooler version, I'm actually going to just drop tool this color. It's from a very warm part of the palette, and just move this straight into the cool part and bring in a cooler tone for her hair. It's still going to read as red, trust me, but it's not going to be such a warm color coming out of nowhere, not belonging to the palette, not belonging to the local light environment. So matching your colors is one massive backbone of establishing a good light environment. Write that back to me. So a light environment is what? Can anyone explain what are the three main components of establishing a really good light environment? So before it was a little orange and now it's a little purple. I still want it to be a little bit more red, but I'm just oversaturating just so I can see. But I want it to stay cool. So this definitely feels like I'm looking at a red-haired woman, but it's not an orange-haired woman. It's matching the red hair tends to look a little bit cooler at night, and this is a night setting. Matching colors, something. Sophie, a quick blur of the hairline and you're done. Yeah, I'm not sure, to make a more believable hairline if you're talking about that. So now the cools of the reds of the hair match the cools of the blues of the armor, which seemed to just, they were the only thing really that was left that wasn't cool enough. I'm going to run a quick desaturate just from like a God mode zoom out. And just, oops, wrong layer. Just get rid of that. The red will still read as red. I'm going to get rid of that saturation here. Light environment, light source, local value of the object, and reflectiveness. Local value of the subject and the reflectiveness. Those are some of them. Could you repeat that thing about matching colors and it being a backbone? Others will repeat it for you. Establishing a light source, match colors to environment and local values. Well, matching colors to the environment and local values are the same thing, but the three main components of a light environment are: what is the color of my light source and its strength, what is the color of the walls or the room and its reflectivity, and what's the value or reflectivity or color of the object. You have to make them all match each other. So the brightness of the object may be a really gray, like a dark gray, but because the room is so bright, that dark gray gets raised up. So now the background matches the object, which both react back to the light source. So light source, the room, the 3D open room that the object is in, so the wall, I call it the wall, and the object. These are the three main components of establishing a good light environment. So the changes I made today, one of them was the room, which is the nighttime scene and the fog of war. And the next one was how bright the light source is. There was no major light source shining on these. There was no sunlight because the room was indicating that. And the object, which I'm getting to. So I'm going to be changing the values on her skin. So just around where the fog starts to rise up, this fog, this very deliberate fog you've thrown, I'm going to throw a gray. Okay, and what we're doing here is we're changing the color of anywhere under that gray. So the gray here that's going over her hair, I'm just going to throw some gray on top. And that area, that just one patch of area is still looking a little bit, just a little bit red, but not too red because the fog is on top of it. The next thing I would do is anything that is reflective. So object is one part of the triangle of the light environment. So the reflective blades should reflect the local environment. So I'm going to desaturate these blades completely to be gray. She's in like this really, really foggy scene. I also don't want them to distract. So now it's composition, not so much light environment. I also don't want them to distract away. So the light is traveling like this. So the next beam would be here on the sword. So it's having this nice curve. I'm going to throw a little beam over here on her armor. And I'm also going to desaturate that. So new color, get my light environment color back. It's both the color and the value. And I'm just going to throw that over everything. The sword is the most reflective object here, so it has to reflect the light environment. Then it's the armor, and then it's her skin. So her skin just feels a little bit too peachy for me, especially if it's in the dark. So that all that yellow is gone because there's no major sunlight shining on her. It's a pretty diffused environment. So I'm bringing that value down. And then some anatomy. So that's how you use fundamentals to apply your corrections. That's how you go through your list and apply it piece by piece to correct your image. So the chin was a little bit too pointy. It was a little symbolic. It wasn't really realistic. And the eye here, though it feels like a real gaze, and I love the intensity in her expression. And I love the distortion in her mouth, kind of like how you added the teeth. I really would recommend just looking at an anatomy book. Compression is really required here, where the nose gets in the way of some of the eye. So we wouldn't see the inner corner of the eye just like that. So let's just get my big blocking brush in. So part of the eye will be hidden under all of this nose, and that's the stacking, the compression that happens in 3/4 view. I'm going to give the nose some volume, just a little bit of volume. Also, if the sun is being fogged out by some sort of overcast in the general environment, where is the sun coming from nonetheless? We still have to know the direction because it's one part of the light environment. So it's one part of that triangle. So where would the light source be coming from? Typically, you want it to be a Rembrandt kind of light source, or at least top down. So we definitely need some shadow down here. I'm going to zoom out. Anytime you're doing core shadows, just zoom out. It'll get better control. So half the nose. And then I'm going to get lighten layer on my brush mode and just throw that over the nose right here. So I'm not touching her expression. It still looks wonderful. It's really great. It's really moving. But I'm still trying to respect some of the geometry on the face. So this very tip of her nose, it warrants some highlight. So I'm going to use dodge tool on midtones just so it can stay away from that danger of dodge tool. Just along the bridge of the nose. And the hairline. The hairline, as Vince mentioned, it's just a simple matter of blurring and combining these shades and being very, very careful not to over-define a specific, like a kind of like a what do you call those infantries that stand like in squares and there's like a bunch of soldiers standing beside each other? If every single hair is just standing beside each other, it feels very like organized and military, like militarily organized. Hair is very random along the hairline, so feel free to get messy with your brush strokes. It is a naturally occurring like a landscape change between the skin and the hair. So you can get crazy with it, especially if she's just in the middle of battle. I recommend some extra wisps of hair though, those would be really cool. Just like that maybe. Just little tiny pieces. I don't want to ruin your image, but just little tiny pieces. Some of them caught the light. It'll make the hair feel that much more natural. Not too much though, remember you only have so limited an amount to work with. I am gonna duplicate layer. And I'm just looking at the skin when I do this. I'm going to shift the skin to a cooler shade. And I'm going to go back and erase to where the skin was before, like everything was before. because the skin before was a little bit too yellow. And I just want it all to match. I want it all to be cool again, because this is the wash we're talking about. The wash, the color of the environment. It was very green before, if you could notice. Didn't feel very natural. Again, remember that not SpongeBob, Scooby-Doo ghost green, you only want to use it when you really want to use it. Like if you're painting a thresh, that's why they chose that greeny color, because he collects, that twilight glow of damned souls. It's always green, even in, I think it was in Hercules as well. Hercules, Styx, Disney. I think they also used green, right? Yeah, they did. And when he was dying in the lake, they also used some green. What? Really? Maleficent was in there? You're kidding. I forget. I think this is like a... Really? That's so cool. I didn't notice. Anyway. But yeah. Styx, Disney. So lots of green. It's just like a universe. This is what I mean by memorizing the colors that are used in media today. Because, green, it just has that shade to it. So if she was ghostly, I guess you would use that. But it's such a subtle green, it doesn't feel deliberate. So let's take a look at the before and after. I would darken, actually, right before I do that, I would darken the sword. Just so it doesn't kind of contest the darkness of her face. Just like that. I would just give it like a set area where it's shining, and then I'm going to allow it to shine back, so have that glow that swords do. Really, really nice fog. It'll add to that foggy effect. Just like that. So instead of the lens flare, you just have this little glare carrying up through the fog. The canvas is cut a little bit short. I would love to see the canvas just a little bit higher. Actually, this whole train of saturation in her hair needs to be limited. So I'm going to actually grayscale her hair on the lower parts right over here and deliberately saturate it only where it's like focal point. Oops. Sponge, saturate, and then just saturate it, just areas where it's just closest to the face. So you don't need to make the hair colored all around, you just need it in these select areas. There are different really, really cool stylistic choices you can do to break all of this really desaturation in the light environment you've chosen. I mean, it's not very fun shooting in fog. It is actually very fun shooting in fog. What am I saying? But it's not fun to if you're into color, if you want to use color and you're shooting in the fog, really, it's not going to be, like, as a photographer, the best colors are going to be under the sun. But there are some ways you can just randomly saturate something, just break a rule, but it's very dangerous for me to recommend that. Actually, image size 3000, and then we paste that in. So before, that lens flare, the purple fighting the orange, I mean, you either make it a daytime scene and you lighten the background up, or you respect the light environment you started from and just balance everything. Look at how balanced the colors are now. Look at the navigator. The navigator is passing, meaning the navigator is showing a read. So learn to read your navigator. Keep your navigator close by. Write that back to me, please. And midtones. Sorry, I'm not looking at the chat. I will in a sec. If you guys ask some really important questions, just ask them again when I'm looking at the chat. I'll look at it in a second. I usually just look at the chat after, before, and after. Alright, so before, after. So the eyes are guided nicely around every unit. You have that glare back of that really dim sun in this foggy place. I recommend getting rid of this pattern in the background. You really don't need it. I promise you, you don't need it. You don't need this little pattern. I would actually get some of the white reflecting off the sunlight, this really dim gray, overcast, foggy color, and I would throw it on the face. So that's one way to match the light environment. Throw the color of the light source on the objects. Not just the intensity of the light source, but the color of the light source. Write that back to me. So just like that, we're throwing that environment color on her skin. So I can only do so much of it because I have so little time. But it helps to unify her with her environment. Alright. Yeah, the gesture is gorgeous. The gesture is really very well done. And like I said, that expression, I really feel like she's in battle. I would change it so that the teeth are a little bit more forward. Her teeth feel just a little bit dysfunctional, like they just seem a little bit late to the party. So I'm just gonna do that and then desaturate. Don't want them to be yellow teeth or any color teeth for that matter. Just a nice out of the way shade. And the shine on her lips, you're using individual brush strokes. Very, very dangerous, throws the focal point completely off. A little blur is all it takes. Like if she's wearing lip gloss, if her mouth is wet from biting her mouth while she's goring her enemy, that would make sense. The symmetry of the lips is actually misaligned, disaligned, unaligned, not aligned. I don't know. Alright, so I'm aligning the symmetry line off the nose with the cupid's bow, so they are aligned typically in a well-functioning, pretty face. So you see, she still looks like a distinguished character. It still feels like a distinguished face. So before the lip, after the lip change. Quite a change. So her face still looks with the same ferocity, but that nose is nice and out of the way at this point. The chin is realigned with the face. The atmosphere is pretty much connected to the light environment. I mean, it's just fog. You threw lots of fog, so it's like she's sliding through, and it's this momentary scene you're capturing where it's beauty and ferocity balanced together. And that lens flare really wasn't needed. It wasn't really reflecting any sunlight. There was so much. If this was a desert scene and you changed the background to be a little brighter, then it would look accurate to have lens flares. I do still recommend you fix the nose. Remember the color of the light source. Yeah, it's good to use that to unify. All right. All right. So what's everybody asking? Keep your hey listen close by. What is that? Like the hey listen. Like what's her name? Navi? Please don't write any weird stuff and don't ask me out on a date if I'm on the stream. Or whatever you got banned for. I'm pretty sure it was something inappropriate. Her eyebrows look wrong. They do feel like Scow's brows, but they're doing so much work. They're just really carrying the expression, and I love this little crease on the eyebrow. I wouldn't even touch them. I wouldn't mess with it. I love her expression. I love her movement. I really love the armor as well. He did great. Is the eye jumping out of the face? Yeah, it is. Again, I don't want to edit too much at this point. I don't want to throw too much of an overload of information. So far, really, to salvage the image from where it is right now is just to make these corrections and then do some studies for three-quarter view. Look at how eyes look and compress in three-quarter view. They don't really jut out like that. They kind of compress and indent inward towards the recess of the eye socket. Ista, are you ever going back to Twitch? No, there's really no point in me going back to Twitch. Twitch is I don't know, it's not very friendly to artists. I feel like I shouldn't repeat myself, but it's not Katarina. Oh, isn't it? Oh. That's... It... You're setting us up so we think it's Katarina because you're doing everything that she is. So it's her hair, and it's her armor, and it's her two blades, and it's Kataraya. Maybe I thought you were like doing a spin-off character of her, but Istebrak is pronounced Scouse, not Scouse. Antares Valdemar, a lot of people use a Z sound when they're saying two S sounds together, like pizza. Like the way we mess around with the sound of pizza. S and Z are very interchangeable in English. So say scows brow. I don't spell it sows. I spell it the way you're supposed to spell. I just say scows. Thank you though. How do metal texture? Just high specular and reflective to the color around it. So it's like a mirror that's distorted. I shouldn't have that. Any more questions before we get on to something else? So that wasn't Katarina. Yeah, I saw. How are you setting me up for this? Anyway. Anywho. I know it was a little bit large for any kind of character. Alright, so let's get on to the next critique. So flatten image. Today I said hoarse voice or bust. So let's see if we can get my voice to go hoarse. Let me just get some water. So are we now debating on how to spell scow's brow? So this is what, oh, what is it? Adobe Help Manager. What? Cancel. Thank you. Exit. Alright, so this is how I spell it. And how I pronounce it is scow's brow. Alright, and this is what I'm talking about, which is the unblended brow. Anywho, let us get on with this one. So the biggest error here, can anyone point it out? What is the change to make? I'll let you guys decide on this one. I am from Britainland. It's scows. Yeah, that's how you spell it, scows. Feminine eyes? No. Lipstick? I don't even have a problem with those two. No, not the scow's brows. The arch brow, even then I don't have a problem with it. It's pretty straight on. The nose bridge has sharp edges. So it is the nose bridge, but what are we saying about the nose bridge? What are these sharp edges? What is the fix? So that's the blatant surface identification, but what's the actual issue? Maybe the bridges of the nose. The pupils look too big. The nose is a little strange. No ears. I don't mind that. That stuff could be hidden with hair. No light source on the head. The face generally looks feminine. Line dependency. So it is the nose, and it's the fact that there's a practical line around the nose. So what we do is we just completely get rid of those. Just see you later. And we replace them with, so it's good that you haven't used this value over here, you know, that at least you didn't do that. Now we get the color of the light environment. So it's probably a white pale light. And this is where we start. We start right here. We replace those edges that you depended on. And we create this elevation of the nose with radial shading just across the top of the nose at the very height of the cylinder. So if you guys remember a couple classes ago, if you didn't see it, go catch it. Basically I talk about radial shading and what radial shading is. And it's just about building up your brush stroke, shrinking it, and adding more paint the higher you get on the altitude of the object. The nose is symbolic, so you have these curls on either side of the nostril, so I'm going to get rid of those. And again, I'm going to replace those with a highlight. Just like that. And I'm going to carry that light all the way down. And the face does look very feminine, for many reasons. The triangle is perfectly square, the eyes are very large. Someone did mention the eyebrows, which I don't feel like are the problem. Let me try fixing the eyes first, and then we'll talk about the eyebrows. So what I would want to fix is the height of the face. So I'm going to raise the height of the face to be a little bit larger. So that's made him more manly just from the get-go. Because what happens with manly faces is they are a bit longer, or they feel longer. The next thing would be shrinking the size of the eyes. So shrink that little doohickey. And this will lengthen the face even more. So we might have to edit the length of the face, which is why I didn't blend the layers yet. Okay, so shrink the eyes. So he's still going to look like a handsome fella. He's still going to be a heartbreaker, but he's not going to be effeminate. And your character will stay, intact. Your character will not be confused by your viewer who's going to be looking at this concept art and wondering, were they going for a female-looking guy? Were they going for a pretty boy? You never want your viewers to ever ask that question. You want everything to be deliberate. Every design choice you make should be deliberate. So instead of lengthening the face, I'm going to just lower the eyes just a little bit. Alright, so we've got the length of the face and the position of the eyes. Actually, I'm going to raise them up. Alright. And then I'm going to enlarge the width of the nose. So I'm just going to let the nose get a little big. It seems like a warrior, kind of like I'm not sure which saint it was, but it's the saint that was always, love his story because it's like the only saint that wasn't a pretty boy. He was always walking through the woods and living in the jungle and stuff, in the forest, like some sort of like Merlin. I forget which saint that was. Saint Jude? No. Saint John? John the Baptist? The one who, I don't know why I'm talking about this. Alright. Next thing to make his face a little bit more masculine is the jawline. I'm just going to make it a little bit stronger. Not the jawline, the cheekbones leading into the jawline. So I'm going to make this a little stronger. Okay. I'm going to throw some highlight there. His whole eye area, so this whole eye area here also feels a little large. So I'm going to shrink it even more. This face is starting to look very, very handsome. What saint was a pretty boy? All of them were pretty boys. You know, the way they're painted. They're all pretty boys. I don't know, Jesus is painted like, my full respects to you and your religion, but Jesus always painted like a beautiful thing. Muhammad, no, not Muhammad, you're not allowed to draw his face, but his disciples were painted like a beautiful thing. But this one guy, his paintings always, he's always so haggard looking. I just love that about him. I don't even know, and I'm not even Christian, I don't even know what the stories are behind him, but that's one thing I've noticed in the art. Alright, so I'm going to give a little bit more intensity to the brows. Sorry for my ignorance of your religion and stuff. I really don't know. I'm going to raise this highlight all the way down, like lower the highlight of the forehead into that on switch that I would talk about. This on switch is consistent through every kind of face, so don't be worried. Just add it in and it won't really disrupt your image. I'm going to throw this. And another reason why his eyes look really effeminate is because you've got some anime size to the pupils. So we've shrunken the eyes a lot. When we shrink this, don't be scared when you see the before and after, because that's what's going to happen. Is it's going to feel extremely, extremely unnatural to have that much size to the eyes. And this is what happens when we draw girls too long. If we don't, not too long isn't size, if we don't take time to make the girls, stop drawing girls and start drawing males and not make girls like the only thing that we're specialists at, the males that we do draw will look a lot more believable and a lot more real. Okay. So I'm just making this pupil. Sorry I'm taking my time. Horse, voice, or bust? Google's saint. He looks like he's wearing makeup. We'll talk about that in a second. Um, I don't think he is. I mean, I'd put concealer all over my eyes if I had pink eyes like this. But we'll talk about that in a sec. So the size of the iris and the pupil were just too large. So I'm going to get rid of that. Kind of looks cool and stern with the blind eye. We can't all have blind eyes though. Flip horizontal. Gonna have to do some editing so this matches. Starting to look good. Throw some cast shadows. Okay, so flatten the image. The makeup aspect I think is coming from the redness of the lips, so what I'm going to do, how do I do this? I'm going to go to dodge on midtones, and I'm just going to raise this up, and I'm going to get the color, and get the skin color, and just change his lip tone to just be a basic pink. I mean a basic beige color. I'm also gonna, because of the hairline that's all around his mustache, like his beard and his lip edges, I'm just gonna blur the edges so they feel a little bit less like lip liner. You also need to start casting some shadows, my friend. We need to start casting these shadows. If you're too afraid to cast shadows, this is a perfect time to start drawing some form studies. Just do some basic work for form studies. So here it is, fully edited. Kind of looks like the brawny kind of man that would have a sword and would be like are you actually drawing Andre versus Michael? Is this Saint Michael? Wait, is his name Saint? Am I talking about the exact saint that you've drawn? I don't know. But he wouldn't be a pretty boy if he were. But this saint halo around him, and he seems to be wearing furs. He's not very fancy looking, so he is probably really good at making a fire. So, before, after. So the first mistake was outlining the lips, outlining the edges of the nose with this line. You need to instead replace those two lines on either side with a highlight. I extended the length of his head longer. That way if it's a little bit more masculine, shrunk the eyes, increased the width of the nose just a little bit. Remove that color completely from his lips, exaggerated the structure of his face, and all around just kept thinking about the inversion of the beauty factors. He's still handsome. So I really recommend you guys watch that video that explains the difference between the ogre and the elf. It really does cover everything that you need. I am going to get, maybe someone who's walking through the forest all the time does get a sweaty face, so I'm going to just get his face to be a little bit more oily and shiny. So it's really starting to look like Conan the Barbarian at this point. Very nice. The hairline is nice and messy. Is nice and messy. I really wouldn't mess with it. I would change this white, but this white, once I remove it, you're going to notice that the skin, everything is way too light. Like, just take a look at where everything sits. It's all the way up here because the white of the background has dragged everything upward. What video did she say to watch? Let me find it for you and just settle this. Let's settle this. My channel. Yes, I'm subscribed to a lot of home improvement stuff. I kind of want to buy a fixer-upper house and work on it. Don't judge. It's one of my dreams to actually fix up an old house and flip a house and stuff. Anyways, what was I saying? Elf and ogre. Where are you? Lesson on elf and the ogre. I think this is it. Alright, so this is it. I explained the chart. This chart is an explanation of where beauty happens. On one end we have the ogre. On the other hand we have the elf. So we have big eyes, small nose, small mouth, small eyes, big nose, big mouth. And this is really the secret to capturing beauty or ugliness in your work, or a perfect balance of both. The in between is the average, which is where men's faces sit. But men can be a little beauteous and look like pretty boys, but still be handsome and lean towards the female. Men can still look handsome and not look like pretty boys, look a little rugged and lean towards the ogre. But or the elf, I mean, and the ogre, but they still would not be completely ugly or completely beautiful. You sit in the nice little beauty zone right here. If you want to draw like a full-on beautiful character and you're actually drawing an actual elf, I recommend go for that big eye, big cat eye thing. And I explain all this here. So you guys have to watch this video if you want the full length explanation. I won't be able to cover it all today. Is the top right thumbnail the painting she's working on in real time, or the top right painting is the navigator? This is a zoomed out version of this. It helps me see whether or not I've made some good molar choices with my values. Lost the comment section. Sorry, one second. It looks so different, that small. Wow. Yes, it does, Rachel Hendricks. It looks so different, and that's what you want. You want an interruption in your vantage point. You want something to interrupt you in your current comfort zone right now. Everyone write that back to me. The navigator has to disrupt your comfort zone and your vantage point. Write that back. This is because it's important to just stop your eyes in their current tunnel vision. You are susceptible to tunnel vision. Write it down. My name is blank. Say your name, and I am susceptible to tunnel vision, like Alcoholics Anonymous or something. Not to make fun of that group, but I'm just saying. Say, I am blank, your name, and I am susceptible to tunnel vision. And you know, like those pet shaming, when they have the paper attached to the pet, and it's like, I am why we can't have nice things. Just say it. Everyone just admit it. And this navigator will help interrupt your tunnel vision. It will give you a different outlook on the painting, whether or not everything looks good. If it looks good from here, it looks good from here. So a before and after. Before, after. He looks effeminate because we're leaning towards this, where is it? We're leaning toward the female side of the beauty factor, but he is still pretty average. If you really want to make him look more masculine, if you're really going for that rugged look, my name is Antares and I'm susceptible to tunnel vision, so I'm reaching out to the navigator so he can disrupt my tunnel vision. I am Tyler and I'm susceptible to tunnel vision. My name is Mr. Dragon and I'm Don't write blank, smartass. My name is Sophie and I'm susceptible to tunnel vision. So what you have to do, if you have, what kind of mistakes can anyone tell me what kind of mistakes a student can make in tunnel vision? So what are some of the mistakes that we can make when we stay zoomed in for too long? So yeah, while you answer that, let me show you how to make him look even more masculine. So gonna do this hair thing right there. Tuck that in there, and then I'm gonna choose this one. My name is Istebrak and I'm susceptible to tunnel vision. Hi, Istebrak. So this is what you do to make him look more ugly. Not ugly, just more rugged. Take the elf completely out of the equation. Bring the eyes closer together. Before, after. Handsome, not so handsome. So you guys, it's a miracle, this ogre and the elf technique. I really recommend you guys go for it, learn it. Too much detail that won't read. All right, it's beautiful. Let's see him come in. Poor color choice and blending. Yes. We don't see the big picture. Yes. Focusing too much on detail. Yes. Hi, my name is Hannah and I'm susceptible. Okay, Hannah. Local vision value errors. Yes, too much detail that won't read. Overlook proportions and symmetry. Focusing on unnecessary details. Lose focus and point of interest. If you go to tunnel vision, you are susceptible to forgetting all the main core shadows of the overall form. So form. Aren't there tricks to getting the tunnel vision? I saw a post about a while ago. Flipping your canvas and interrupting all kinds of vantage points. So really just looking at it in a whole new angle is really what it's all about. Zoomed in, zoomed out, different angles. Mirror reflections. Lighting will be affected when zoomed in too long. People tend to see only the big picture. The little picture you mean, not the big picture. The big picture is what we're going for. So guess what all of the things you just listed are? These are all fundamentals. So zooming in makes you lose fundamentals. So zooming out is one of the reasons why, not zooming out could have been one of the reasons why you didn't do this, why you didn't get this work done. So this is how important it is to have a navigator. I'm surprised, really, and shocked almost at how little students use navigators nowadays. So before, after. So do you see this kind of removed the beauty from his face? And even another method, where's my pen? Okay. Another method to make his face a little bit more rugged looking is to increase the size of the nose ever so slightly. Just like that. And now even more, the lip feels wider and he feels less handsome. And then we're just gonna enlarge the lips. A little bit of, no more eyebrows, completely just remove the strength on the eyebrow. It's kind of starting to look like a non-Asian Donnie Yen. And I know some people, including myself, who have the biggest crush on Donnie Yen. And he's still handsome, but he doesn't look like, what's his name, that one soccer player? Roberto something. He's just like a big diva with big, really pretty hair. What's his name? He's like a Is he Brazilian? I don't know. He just doesn't look like a pretty boy. He doesn't look like no Justin Bieber. Okay? But he's still handsome. So these are one ways to uglify your character. And the before. And then the full after. That's why it felt like he was wearing lipstick. It just didn't feel like a nude lip. And then the beautiful after. All these changes can be possible. They can be things that you can do yourself. You don't have to be a pro or whatever. Just remember that I'm here listing exactly what the issues are. Write those issues down. Write them down on a paper. And work from that. Memorize. Do what you have to do to be your own critiquer, your own editor, your own art doctor. Guys' eyebrows are often bushier, and they're very straight. They don't have much of a. It's all that testosterone that causes a lot of hair growth. Oh, what was that sound? Anyways, just heard a bunch of piano. Yeah, and they don't have the arch. Ronaldinho. Yes, Ronaldinho. Yeah, that pretty boy. Yeah, he does have the upside down U highlight. Yeah, it's very subtle. I flipped the canvas to see imperfections, but they're symmetrical imperfections. Flipping the canvas won't help you with some major issues. Zooming out is really important. Navigator is love, navigator is life. Thank you, Swift Shredder. But then I'm scared to zoom since I know that. It's okay. Don't be scared. Just do it. You'll love your work less and less. You're only scared because you love your work too much. Just learn to not love your work so much. All right. So if you guys are interested in everything that we do here, please join the Google community. This is where I chose everything that I looked at today. All the environment stuff. There is a challenge currently running that is due on the I always forget what's wrong with me. The 9th and the 11th. Did I write the 9th and the 12th? Oh yeah, the 9th and the 11th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Both days, 2 weeks from now, we'll spend. Is it 2 weeks from now? We'll spend on. Yes, it is. On just everything environments. So to download the resource pack, which is the environment challenge, to download it, go to istebrak.com/community, and you'll find it here. This is the resource pack. If you are interested in the programs I used today or interested in everything else that I have on my store is available on my website. Thank you everyone for watching today. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.